Hey everyone, so in front of me I have the new Druid and Paladin playtest for 1D&D, and I've spent the last 3 hours going over it, and I've been kind of making notes and compiling the changes that I've seen from 5th edition as well as from our previous playtests. So what I want to do in this video is go over those changes, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on my opinions. Some of this stuff I think I'm going to need to digest and really consider to, develop my own opinions about them. At which point, I will probably do some videos talking about my opinions on these changes. But what I want to do in this video is just to inform you what those changes are so that you can come up with your own opinions and let me know in the comment section down below. I also should mention, like I said, I've gone over this for 3 hours. However, I have read it like one time, so if I have misread something or I have missed something, by all means let me know in the comments down below. I think I should be mostly accurate here, but if I am inaccurate on a few things, I will also make correction notes, and I'll probably pin them in the comments section. So there are some big ideas in this playtest. The first one that I want to mention is that class capstones, and that's something we've been kind of complaining about since we first saw the first class list, which was the expert classes, is that the capstones seem pretty lackluster. They were giving us epic boons, and the epic boons just didn't seem all that epic. So they have gone all in on class capstones now. Epic boons got a huge boost. And if you reach 20th level and get an epic boon, you're not even just getting the epic boon anymore. So we'll be going over that. The second thing I would note is that there is a significant move away from the front loading of classes. This is something I recently actually did a video on, that I was concerned about the front loading of classes. We can definitely see a move away from that, and we'll go over one of their gray sidebars that kind of explains their design intent. Third, Druid Wild Shape massively changed. It is now a central feature of the class, and it's going to be using templates, and we'll be going over those. And Paladin. The big change for Paladin is Smite. Smite is massively changed. It is both boosted and nerfed, depending on how you look at it, but it is an entirely new thing, and the way that Paladin Smite spells work now work more seamlessly, I would say, with Paladin Smite. And finally, the rules glossary continues to change, and in some cases we're seeing reversions, and in other cases we're seeing new stuff. So let's start with the Druid. Alright, so we were all wondering about armor and Druids. We have our answer. Druids are now going to be proficient in light armor and shields. They are no longer proficient in medium armor. And the prohibition against wearing metal armor is gone. So presumably if you are a druid and then you multiclass into like a fighter, you could wear metal armor. At first level, we are going to get Channel Nature. This is going to be like the druid answer to Channel Divinity. And it starts with 2 uses, and those scale with class levels. So the whole proficiency bonus per long rest, it looks like they're moving away from that and now having things scale with class levels. We actually see this with the Paladin as well. We're told that we can use Channel Nature twice. It will eventually scale to 4 uses, and we regain 1 expended use when we finish a short rest and all expended uses when we finish a long rest. So we're moving away from proficiency bonus per long rest, and frankly, I'm up for that. The first feature we're going to get is Wild Shape. So now a Druid can Wild Shape at level 1. They use a magic action, and you start knowing one form, Animal of the Land, which is detailed in the Wild Shape sections later in this class description. So Wild Shape is now all done by template. There are a couple additional differences from the original Wild Shape that I should mention. One is you can speak in Wild Shape now, so that's great. Another thing they say is that your game statistics are replaced by those from the template. Now, they say in the template that you keep your proficiency bonus. What it doesn't say in the template is that you keep your saving throw bonuses or proficiencies or your skill proficiencies. So if the intention is that we're not supposed to have those proficiencies, then great job. But if the intention was that we would keep those proficiencies, then they need to add that, because if that was the intention, they've missed it. Another big change is you are going to keep your own hit points. Then I'm just going to highlight this design note, uses of Channel Divinity / Nature. In the previous Unearthed Arcana, the Cleric's version of Channel Divinity offered a number of uses equal to that character's proficiency bonus. That number is too generous for a multi-class character who can take only one level in the Cleric and then get an ever-increasing uses as the character gains levels in another class. In the Druid and Paladin, we have therefore given Channel Divinity and Channel Nature a number of uses tied to that class rather than proficiency bonus. When we release the next version of the Cleric, you'll see a similar treatment there. We will also address multi-classing issues in other classes when we revisit them. So you already know what I think about this because I have talked about it. But yes, I'm thrilled. Spellcasting is pretty much what we would expect, right? They're going to be using primal spells and using the standard 1D&D spell preparation. And then we get to second level and we get Nature's Aid. And this is going to give us 2 more ways to use our channel Nature. So we have Wild Shape, plus we're going to have Healing Blossoms and Wild Companion. Wild Companion should look familiar because we had it as an optional class feature from Tasha's, but basically it's going to allow us to cast the Find Familiar spell without material components. I already saw a question from somebody. It says, as a magic action, you can expend a use of your channel Nature and cast the Find Familiar spell without material components. It should probably specify, I'm sure that the intention is that the channel Nature use replaces the use of the spell slot, but it would be nice if they clarified that it doesn't use a spell slot. Another thing I noticed that changed about Wild Companion is it used to last a number of hours equal to half our Druid level. Now it lasts until our next long rest, so a significant duration increase for Find Familiar. The new ability is Healing Blossoms. It says as a magic action, you can channel healing energy, and it appears as blooming flowers. Choose a point within 30 feet of yourself, and spectral flowers appear for a moment in a 10-foot radius sphere centered on that point. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to roll a number of d4s equal to your wisdom bonus, and that many hit points can be distributed to any creatures within the sphere. At 3rd level, we get our subclass, and at 5th level, we're going to get Might of the Land. This allows us, when we use our Wild Shape feature, we're now going to have multi-attack and a climb speed. So there it is right there. I will show you the templates once we get through the class features. At 7th level, we'll get an aquatic form, so this is another template. And then at 9th level, we get an aerial form, and that's yet another template. So we will have 3 templates, and there are variations within those templates depending on your level. And we will get the ability to customize these templates. So at 11th level, we get an ability where we can become a tiny creature. So these templates will normally allow us to choose between small, medium, or large sized. But at 11th level, we can also do tiny, though it will reduce our damage. So the damage you deal in that form is halved. It is also limited in duration. So if we choose to become tiny, it lasts for up to 10 minutes. Now the way I read this is using a use of our Wild Shape, and the entire Wild Shape only lasts 10 minutes. Like you become tiny, and then once that 10 minutes is gone, you revert to your normal form, and you've lost your Wild Shape. That's the way at least I read it. At 13th level, we get alternating forms, and this gives us yet another way to improve our Wild Shape. So you can now rapidly shift between Wild Shape form and your normal form. If you are in a Wild Shape form, you can switch to your normal form as a bonus action, which you could do anyway, and then you can switch back into that Wild Shape form within the next minute. And I'll just scroll up. As a bonus action, neither switch expends a use of Wild Shape. Now, there needs to be a bit of clarification here. Again, I think I know how it's supposed to work. So let's say you have Wild Shape and it has a 4-hour duration. So you're an 8th level Druid, you got a 4-hour Wild Shape. And maybe 2 hours into it, then you decide to use your bonus action to revert to your normal form, and then you do your little things for a minute, and then you revert back to your Wild Shape. Do you have 2 hours of duration left? I assume you do. However, it should probably be clarified that the Wild Shape form doesn't reset its duration. And then we get another boost to our Wild Shape at level 15. This basically says that when we use our Wild Shape, we're going to get a free use of Healing Blossoms, which is that 2nd level healing feature, at the same time that we used our Wild Shape. At 17th level, we're going to get the ability to cast spells while in Wild Shape, and I noticed one boost from what we see in the player's handbook. So there's an ability in the player's handbook, Beast Spells, that allows you to do spells that have somatic and verbal components as long as they don't have material components. Here, you can still cast it if it has a material component, as long as that material component is free and not consumed. At 18th level, with Archdruid, whenever you roll initiative, you regain 1 use of your channel nature, so that will be in addition to 1 for every short rest, and regaining them all on a long rest, as well as our regular class uses. So you're going to have a lot of uses of channel nature, and the slow aging, which is 1/10 your normal rate. And the old capstone of Druid that allowed you unlimited use of Wild Shape is now gone. Now, our new epic boon, so at level 20, this is what happens. You're going to get the epic boon or feat that we got before, and they have all been boosted significantly. As well, we're going to get an ability score increase. Choose one of your ability scores, that score increases by 2, and this increase can raise the score above 20, but not above 30. So this is a huge increase to what we saw at 20th level with the classes up to now, and I'm all for it. And we can see these design notes. These are really helpful because they tell us a little bit about what's going to happen with the stuff we've already seen. Because we had complaints about it. Are they just changing it for the Druid and Paladin? No. They say, in response to playtest feedback, we've made the Epic Boon feature in the Druid and Paladin more powerful than the version previously offered in the Cleric and 3 Experts. When we revisit those classes, we'll add the ability score increase benefit to their versions of the feature. So in terms of taking care of front-loading of classes and multi-class abuse, as well as making it so that 20th level Epic Boon features all feel really powerful, that sounds like it will be universal, including the classes we've already seen. So let's look at our wild shapes. First, we have the Animal of the Land template, and it says we can choose from small, medium, or large terrestrial animal. And it says that you can basically choose any animal you want. It might be a hybrid of animals. So if you want to be an owl bear, you can be an owl bear. Your armor class will be 10 plus your wisdom modifier. That will probably be higher than existing wild shapes, though not particularly high. Then we have hit points. You continue to use your hit points and hit dice. So this is a massive change from our current wild shape. Speed will be 40 feet and climb 40 feet once we achieve 5th level. Our strength and dexterity equal our wisdom score. So whatever our wisdom score is, that will also be our strength score and dexterity score when we are in wild shape. Our constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma are unchanged. We're going to get dark vision 60 feet. That's really nice to see on wild shape. And languages don't change. Your proficiency bonus doesn't change. Keen senses, you have advantage on wisdom perception checks. And actions, we're going to get a Bestial Strike. It's a melee attack. It uses our spell attack modifier, and it's going to do a d8 plus our wisdom modifier, bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage, and I assume we basically pick. Then when we get to 5th level, we're going to get multi-attack. You make 2 Bestial Strike attacks, so this is kind of equivalent. I mean, extra attack is a little bit different than multi-attack, but it's kind of equivalent to extra attack that your martial classes would be getting at 5th level. This is one of those things that I need to really think about to determine what my opinions of it are. I like the idea of a template, but I am going to have to get into the details. Then we have the Animal of the Sea. This won't be available until level 7, and armor class is going to be the same. Hit points will be the same. We're going to get a swim speed of 40 feet. Now, our strength score isn't going to change, just our dexterity changes to our wisdom. And we're going to have an increased dark vision. It's now 90 feet. We're going to get amphibious, of course. And we're going to get 2 Bestial Strike attacks. And I noticed the damage is slightly reduced. It's a D8 for Animal of the Land, D6 for Animal of the Sea. And then when we get to 9th level, we're going to get Animal of the Sky. I noticed the armor class is a bit lower. We're going to have a fly speed of 40. We're going to get flyby. And our dark vision is now 120 feet. This one has the least amount of damage with the D4 plus our wisdom modifier. And this was a big surprise, is that we see Circle of the Moon. So up to now, what we have seen for subclasses are the classes that are included in the core rules. Those are the free rules that you can download. And for those, we had the stuff we've seen. The Thief subclass, the College of Lore subclass, the Hunter for the Ranger, And we see the Oath of Devotion for the Paladin. Those are all core subclasses. The core subclass for the Druid has always been Circle of the Land. So to see Circle of the Moon here was a big surprise. So let's see what they get. At 3rd level, they will get Combat Wild Shape. First off, this allows them to use Wild Shape as a bonus action or as a regular action. That's the same as in the Player's Handbook. Here are the big differences. First, while you're in Wild Shape form, you can cast any spell you currently have prepared from the Abjuration School, provided the spell doesn't require a material component. The very first spell I think of is the Shield spell. Now, I don't know how the Shield spell will be changed in 1D&D, but if you are using this as a playtest, I would definitely want a multi-class or get some feat or something that is going to get me access to the Shield spell, because that will be huge when we're using Wild Shape. And finally, you can use the Unarmed Strike as a bonus action. So we would be getting 2 attacks at level 1, and we'd be getting 3 attacks at level 5. And remember, we can grapple or shove prone with an Unarmed Strike. At 6th level, we will get Elemental Wild Shape. And what we're going to do is we're going to choose one of the following damage types: Acid, Cold, Fire, Lightning, or Thunder. And this will have 2 impacts. First, we will get resistance to that damage type. And second, whenever we hit with an attack, we can choose to do the regular damage, or we can choose to do the Acid, Cold, Fire, Lightning, or Thunder damage. And it's our choice when we make the hit. Then at 10th level, we're going to get an additional boost to our Wild Shape. And now we're going to do an additional d6 damage of the damage type we chose. And this is not that once per turn thing that we have seen so many times up to now. It is on every attack that uses the Bestial Strike. So I would assume this would not come into play with the Unarmed Strike. Then at 14th level, we're going to get Thousand Forms, and this one is not changed. It's the same as the Player's Handbook. You get Alter Self, and you can cast it at will. Moving on to the Paladin, Channel Divinity is now gained at level 3. And again, it's going to scale by class level from 2 to 4. It now gets cantrips. We saw this with the Ranger, so we're seeing it with the Paladin as well. And like with the Ranger, we're now rounding up levels when multiclassing to determine spellcasting progression. None of these things are big surprises except for the Channel Divinity. At 1st level, we get Lay on Hands. It is very similar to the way it was before. The big differences are it no longer removes diseases, and it now removes the poison condition for 5 points, and it used to just say neutralize poison. So in cases where you might have had continuing poison damage or something like that, it would remove it. Now, I don't even know if continuing poison damage is going to be a thing in 1D&D, so it might be functionally the same. Spellcasting is pretty much what we've seen for 1D&D up to now. Divine Smite, huge changes. Okay, so first off, Unarmed Strike is now an option. Ranged weapons are now an option. It is, however, limited to once per turn, and not on the same turn that you cast a spell. So you can't cast a bonus action, then attack, then do a smite. Can't do it. Also, instead of doing damage in addition to the weapons damage, like it does in the Player's Handbook, it's presented here as a separate instance of damage. It says, immediately after you hit a target with an attack roll using a weapon or unarmed strike, you can expend 1 spell slot to deal radiant damage to the target. The damage is 2d8 for a 1st level spell slot, blah blah blah. Now, the way this is worded compared to the Divine Smite in the Player's Handbook leads me to think that this might be a separate instance of damage. If that's the case, then it wouldn't double on a critical hit. So I'm not certain whether or not these smites double on a critical hit or not, and I would like the developers to make a clarification on that. Now, I noticed 2 different ways that it has changed in terms of how the damage scales. So the first is that if it's an undead or fiend, you no longer get the extra d8. And the second is, if we use spell slot levels above level 4, we continue to get d8s, because that didn't used to be the case before. So massive changes to Divine Smite here. You can smite with your longbow. However, you can only do it once per round. It may not double on a critical hit. However, we can scale it beyond 4th level slots. We also get a fighting style at 2nd level, and this is just like we saw with the Ranger, where the Paladin can select fighting styles that the warrior group would normally only be able to select, and it sounds like they can basically choose whichever one they want. At 3rd level, we'll get our Channel Divinity, and it's just like Channel Nature, where you're going to get 1 use recovered on a short rest, and all uses on a long rest. Then we're going to get Divine Sense, which is now the use of a Channel Divinity. It is now a bonus action. And one huge difference from Divine Sense from the player's handbook is they have removed the part about total cover. So it used to be you use Divine Sense, and if that undead creature is behind a wall, then you cannot sense them. That is no longer the case. Divine Sense has now been opened up, so if something's within 60 feet and it fits the descriptions for Divine Sense, you get it. However, we are delayed in getting it. We're only getting it at 3rd level instead of 1st level. Then our subclass at 3rd level as normal, extra attack as normal at 5th level, and at 5th level we will get Faithful Steed. They tell us that we will always have the Find Steed spell prepared, and it doesn't count against the number of spells we can prepare. Also, when we cast a spell, its casting time is an action. It's going to be 10 minutes for everyone else. We can also cast it once without expending a spell slot, and we regain the ability to do so when we finish a long rest. So Find Steed now built in to the Paladin. We're also going to see a redesign of the Find Steed spell. We'll get into that later. Alright, then we have Aura Protection, now a 7th level feature, no longer 6th level. The other change is it doesn't extend through total cover. I think most people probably didn't play it that way anyways, but it wasn't clarified, now it is. Another thing clarified is that it doesn't stack. So if you have 2 Paladins, they both have Aura Protection, you choose which one that you are affected by. At 9th level, we are going to get a unique feature called Abjure of Foes. As a magic action, you can expend 1 use of your Channel Divinity to overwhelm foes with Divine Awe. So you're going to present your holy symbol or your weapon, and then you target a number of creatures up to your Charisma modifier within 60 feet. They make Wisdom saves, or they're dazed and frightened for 1 minute, or until they take damage. If they are successful on the save, they're still dazed for 1 minute or until they take damage. At 11th level, we'll get Radiant Strike. It is like improved Divine Smite, except now it allows ranged weapons, though I notice it doesn't allow unarmed strikes. At 13th level, we're going to get Aura of Courage, so this has been delayed by 3 levels. The other thing I'll note is that it specifies that if a creature is already frightened when it enters the aura now suppresses the frightened condition. At 15th level, we'll get Restoring Touch. This is a huge boost to our Lay on Hands feature, which can now remove blinded, charmed, dazed, deafened, frightened, paralyzed, or stunned. And you must expend 5 hit points from the healing pool, so you can use Lay on Hands once, restore 10 hit points, as well as remove the blinded and paralyzed conditions, and it costs you 20 points from the pool. And a big boost to the Paladin, the Aura expansion to 30 feet is now at 17th level. This is a huge boost. I've played some 20th level Paladins. That 30-foot Aura is big. And at 18th level, whenever we roll initiative, we regain 1 use of this class's Channel Divinity. And then at 20th level, we get an Epic Boon, and just like the Druid, same thing. We're going to get an ability score increase on top of an Epic Boon feat. Alright, we're going to move on to the subclass, which is the Oath of Devotion. They talk about breaking your oath here. They talk about the tenets of devotion, which haven't changed. And then we're going to get our oath spells. First thing I noticed here is you now get a free casting. So where is it? There it is, free casting. You can cast one of your prepared spells from this feature without expending a spell slot, and you must finish a long rest before you can do so again. As for the spells, Shield of Faith replaces Sanctuary, Aid replaces Lesser Restoration, Aura of Vitality and Blinding Smite replace Beacon of Hope and Dispel Magic, and Staggering Smite replaces Freedom of Movement. And you might have heard a lot of Smite spells there. Smite spells all got revamped in this playtest. As for our beginning feature, Sacred Weapon. So, as before, it uses our Channel Divinity to use Sacred Weapon, adds our Charisma bonus to the hit rolls. That's all the same. Here's the differences. First, and most importantly, it is now a bonus action. Used to be an action, so you can now attack on the same turn that you use Sacred Weapon. And the second change is you can do the normal damage of the weapon or radiant damage. Now there's something I've noticed for both the Moon Druid and Oath of Devotion. And these are both changes from the player's handbook. And I wonder, it makes me speculate what might be happening with monsters and resistances. Because Moon Druids used to have their attacks treated as magical. Now instead they can substitute a damage type. And Oath of Devotion Paladins with Sacred Weapon could have their attacks treated as magical. Now they can substitute their damage type with Radiant damage. So is the whole resistance to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage going to go away? If so, I will be thrilled. But this is pure speculation on my part. Then at 6th level, our Divine Smite will improve. So when we use Divine Smite, we can now give ourselves or an ally within 30 feet a bunch of temporary hit points, d8 plus the level of the spell slot used for the Divine Smite. Then at 10th level, our Aura of Devotion gives immunity to the charm condition. This, of course, used to be 7th level, though it includes suppressing the effect of somebody who's already charmed. So if you have a player character that gets dominated and then you move so that they're within your aura, it would suppress that charm condition. And then at 14th level, we're going to get Holy Nimbus. I'll note that Purity of Spirit is now gone. So Holy Nimbus used to be like the capstone for the Devotion Paladin. Now it's 14th level, and it is now a bonus action. It used to be an action. It's now tied to your Holy Aura instead of being like its own aura. And the Radiant Damage used to be a flat 10. Now it's Proficiency bonus plus Charisma. And it used to be once per long rest, but now it's once per long rest, or you can expend a 4th level spell slot or higher to use it again. And that is the Paladin. So let's move on to feats, and basically what we've seen is a change of some of the epic boons. First, we have the Epic Boon of Fate. It now gives a +1 to an ability score. And previously, what you could do is you could effect a d20 test. You could add a d10 or subtract a d10, and that you had one use that got recovered when you rolled initiative, or you took a short rest, or you took a long rest. Now it says, when another creature within 60 feet of you fails a d20 test, you can roll 2d4 and apply that total rolled as a bonus or penalty to the d20 roll. So the advantage here, of course, is that you can add it after the roll is made, so when you know you need it. The issue, and I'm sure this is a mistake, is why would we want to apply a penalty to a roll that has already failed? So they've messed up something there, so it's probably just a matter of rewording it. And now we're going to have 8 uses of it, and we get it back after a long rest. Actually, we don't get it all back. We get 2d4 expended uses back after a long rest. One way or the other, this is massively improved. Then we have the Epic Boon of Spell Recall. Now, I hated this one in the last playtest, but just to remind you of what it did, it allows you to cast a spell of levels 1 through 5 once without using a spell slot per long rest. And when you're 20th level, that's nothing. So here, what they've done is, first off, you're going to get your increase to Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma by +1. And second, whenever you cast a spell with a spell slot, that's 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th level, you roll a d4, and if that d4 matches the spell slot level, then the slot isn't expended. In other words, you have a 1 in 4 chance every time you cast a spell of any of those levels that it's free. And then with the Epic Boon of True Sight, you were going to get the ability score bonus as well. And here's the design note, Epic Boon Feats. We've received requests for Epic Boon Feats to be more epic. We agree that they could use more pizzazz. With that in mind, we offer 3 revised ones here, and we'll offer more in the future. So in other words, all those epic boons, they're all going to get boosted up. Alright, so now we're going to talk about spells, and we're going to have a number of revised spells here. So I'm just going to scroll down here. And here we go. We'll begin with Banishing Smite, and there's going to be some universals, lots of smite spells. So let's just talk about some universals. First off, they are no longer a bonus action, and then you kind of hold them, and then you wait till you hit, and then they're expelled. Now it is a bonus action, which you take immediately after hitting a creature with a weapon or an unarmed strike. So the bonus action is now after you hit. Furthermore, it no longer specifies the type of weapon you have to use, and unarmed strikes are now available. The other big thing about Banishing Smite is there is no concentration. Now, I shouldn't say no concentration is universal, because there is a case where there is concentration, but there is no concentration on most of these spells now. However, keep in mind that because you cannot cast a spell on the same turn you use a Smite, you will not be able to combine these with Smite. These will be alternatives to using Smite. The other changes on Banishing Smite are that it used to be automatic on a target with 50 hit points or less. Now, there's no hit point limit, but they make a Charisma save. Furthermore, they're going to get a save at the end of each of their turns to end the effect. and it can now be upcast for an additional d10 damage per spell slot level. Then we have Blinding Smite, and it has similar changes to Banishing, so bonus action after you hit, no concentration. It also can now be upcast, and in this case, it's a d8 per spell slot level. Find Familiar got changed. It is now a template spell, so we're going to cast Find Familiar, and we're going to get a familiar that fills a template, and we have choices within that template. We're going to pick whether it's a Celestial, Fey, or Fiend. We also choose Air, Land, or Water, and there have been a lot of fixes here. So number one, it no longer rolls its initiative separate from yours, and then you have to track it in addition to yours. Now it takes its turn immediately after yours. And if you use your reaction, you can have it attack. Furthermore, we can now upcast Find Familiar, and it gets boosts. Finally, it is no longer a ritual, so you're going to have to use a spell slot to cast it. There has been a fix to the most abused part of the Find Familiar spell, which was the putting it in its pocket dimension. Then you could have it reappear anywhere within range, and that was so abusable. Now the familiar pocket dimension abuse is gone. Also note that we can look through its senses, and that no longer has a range on it. Overall, the Find Familiar has probably been, I don't know if it's been, I'm going to have to think about it. It has been nerfed in some ways and boosted in others. Find Steed has been changed. So we are going to now choose whether it is a Celestial, Fey, or Fiend. It is automatically going to be large size now. It automatically functions as a controlled mount. We no longer share spells with it. And it can be upcast, just like Find Familiar, and we're going to get boosts within the template. And you'll notice that the Find Greater Steed spell is now kind of built in to the Find Steed spell. Now, I was left with one question here, is in combat it shares your initiative count and it functions as a controlled mount as defined in the rules on mounted combat. And my question would be is, if your ally is using your Find Steed mount, does the Found Steed have its initiative change to the allies? I'm not sure. So here's the template for Otherworldly Steed. We can see its armor class is 10 plus 1 per spell level of natural armor. I assume we could still use barding for it. Hit points are now 5 plus 10 per spell level. That means even at our base second level casting, it will have more hit points than a warhorse. Speed of 60 feet, or fly of 60 feet, requiring a 4th level spell or higher. So you want your Pegasus casted at 4th level. And Share Spells is gone, replaced by Life Bond. When you regain hit points from a spell of 1st level or higher, the steed regains the same number of hit points if you're within 5 feet of it. Your steed is also going to get a special ability depending on whether you chose Fey, Fiend, or Celestial. If you chose Fey, it's going to get a 60-foot teleport that includes the rider. If you chose Fiend, then it's going to get Fell Glare. This is an ability to frighten a creature that fails a Wisdom saving throw. And if you chose Celestial, it'll get a Healing Touch, and that restores hit points equal to 2d8 plus the spell's level, and all of these are bonus actions. Also, they're once per long rest. Glimmering Smite is not a new spell, it is simply renamed Branding Smite. So it is pretty much the standard Smite spell stuff that we've seen. Bonus action after you hit, no concentration. The only difference really I noticed is it now specifies the invisible condition ends rather than the target becomes visible. The issue with saying that the target becomes visible actually means that there are certain aspects of the invisible condition that would still apply. That is now fixed. Searing Smite, pretty much the standard Smite spell stuff we've seen. And the other thing that I noticed that was different is the ability to use an action to end the spell is now gone. Because it used to be that, the creature you hit, they could use their action, or somebody else could use their action to put out the flames. That's no longer an option. Spare the Dying got a big boost, so it now restores 1 hit point. And my question would be is there no limit to this? Because it seems like if we're talking about the yo-yo effect of people go down, they come up, they go down, they come up, the new Spare the Dying would seem to make that worse. And I wondered if there was something in the dying condition that prevented that happening, and I didn't see anything, making me think that if they want to use this way, there needs to be something in the dying condition just preventing them from coming up over and over again. Staggering Smite, basically the standard Smite spell stuff, now cause the stun condition until the end of your next turn on a failed wisdom save, and it used to cause disadvantage and remove reaction, so that's a fairly big boost. It also can now be upcast. Thunderous Smite had all kind of the standard changes, and it also can be upcast now. In fact, all the smite spells can be upcast. Wrathful Smite is the only smite spell I noticed that had kind of a nerf to it, so it does not have the standard smite stuff because this one does use your concentration. And also, now instead of using an action to make an ability check to end the effect, now they get a saving throw at the end of each of their turns, though it now can be upcast. And that's all the spell changes. So I'm going to give just kind of an overview of the rules glossary changes. So we see new entries here. It says Dying Condition, Knocking a Creature Out, Short Rest, Telepathy, and Unconscious. So the Dying Condition, it's not unlike the rules for dying in 5th edition. The big change is you now, if you make 3 successes on your death saves, then you are going to regain 1 hit point, but you don't regain consciousness. You're still unconscious, and you immediately start a short rest. For knocking a creature out, so this is when, if you do a melee attack to somebody and you drop them to 0 hit points, that you can choose to have it be non-lethal. Well, now, if you knock a creature out, you reduce them to 1 hit points, but they do gain the unconscious condition, and they start a short rest. They remain unconscious until they regain hit points, or a creature uses an action and makes a DC 10 Wisdom Medicine check, in which case they wake up. And with short rest, the main differences are, you have to have a hit point to benefit from it, and it is specified what ends the short rest. If you roll initiative, if you cast a spell other than a cantrip, or you take damage, your short rest is ruined. For telepathy, it is standardized. So if you have telepathy, contacted creature doesn't need to share a language with you, but it must be able to understand at least one language or be telepathic itself, and communication is two-way by standard. And the unconscious condition, basically, the only difference is that it says your speed is 0 and cannot change. I think most of us would have assumed that to begin with, but they have actually added that in. So now let's talk about the revised entries. So let's just bring that up. Okay, so first off, D20 test. Rolling a 1 on a D20 no longer awards inspiration, which is now called Heroic Advantage. So there is basically no way to get Heroic Advantage now other than your DM awarding it, or there's special method through the human, or after a long rest. Difficult terrain. This is the big difference for difficult terrain. Your allies are no longer difficult terrain for you, so you can move through an ally's space unhindered. And then there's a little bit of a correction. We noted this on the last Unearthed Arcana, that it said that any furniture that was small size or larger is automatically difficult terrain. Pointed out that, that doesn't make sense for big creatures, so they've corrected that. Equipping weapons. It says, clarified how equipping weapons and unequipping work. Just keep in mind that we saw a clarification in how they worked in our last Unearthed Arcana, and this just includes more clarification, but there are no changes to those rules. So for fly speed, it says, changed what causes you to fall. Not a fan of this one. I don't need a night to think about that. So basically, they've reverted. So in the last Unearthed Arcana, if you had a hover, of course, you didn't fall from fly regardless. But otherwise, you would only fall if you were incapacitated or restrained. Now they've included prone and speed of 0. So they've kind of reverted on that. And I'm disappointed because I like those changes and I hate to see them go. The grappled condition. So a little bit of a change. They got rid of the slowed condition. So the grappled, when you used to grapple somebody, you got the slowed condition for dragging. Now they're doing basically 1 extra foot of movement for each foot you drag a grappled creature. The help action, basically they just say now that you can help with tool proficiencies. Heroic Advantage, they just renamed it. So it was Heroic Inspiration, now it's Heroic Advantage. The incapacitated condition just clarifies that it blocks bonus actions. So it always said that you can't take actions or reactions. That always kind of implied bonus actions. Now it specifically says bonus actions as well. For long rest, it says basically changes have been made to every section of the rule. Though it is not as many changes as you would think, it's mostly just wording changes. So it adds that you're unconscious when you sleep, in case you didn't know that. It specifies that long rest recovery features are regained, in case you didn't know that. Now interrupting a rest says rolling initiative interrupts the rest rather than having combat, which basically is the same thing. As well as if you take damage, now your long rest is interrupted, which makes sense. Then for moving. So moving around other creatures and changes to your speed sections changed. So what that means is it's saying that moving around allies is no longer difficult terrain, which we already covered. It specifies that if you have an increase or decrease to your speed, any special speeds are also affected. So if you have a -10 speed, you also have a -10 fly speed. And the rules for special speeds are gone. People are going to be very happy about this. So in the last Unearthed Arcana, if you were to use your move to fly, you couldn't use any more of your move to walk, or if you started walking and then started to climb, you couldn't combine those movements. That's gone now. So we're going back to the old 5e method, and I'm sure most of you are very happy to hear that. Now, for Unarmed Strike. Okay, so this is something that 50% of you are going to be happy about, and 50% of you are going to be disappointed with. So basically, since the beginning of 1D&D, we have seen Unarmed Strike changed. So now you can use Unarmed Strike to grapple somebody or to shove them. And it required an attack roll, and if the attack roll was successful, then the grapple or shove attempt was successful. Now, grappling and shoving are still under Unarmed Strike, but they no longer have an attack roll. Now they are going to have a saving throw. So the target is going to make a dexterity or strength saving throw, their choice, and then we're going to use a DC. It's equal to our strength modifier plus 8 plus our proficiency bonus. And if they fail the save, then they're grappled or shoved. So it's no longer going to be dependent on the target's armor class. So I imagine about half of you will be happy with that, and about half of you will not be. Things that are removed: ability check, attack roll, climbing and swimming, dash, hidden, jump, slowed, special speeds. So most of these are just basically going back to the old 5th edition rules. So ability checks, basically we're going to be using 5th edition rules for ability checks. Now, the one thing that they don't mention here as for how it changes things is hidden. So it says hidden condition is now gone. Now, the hide action used to give you the hidden condition. Now the hide action just straight out gives you the invisible condition. So you still have to have cover and all that stuff, but I guess they felt that the hidden condition and the invisible condition weren't different enough to justify having them both. So now hiding gives you the invisible condition. And those are all the changes in Unearthed Arcana. So this is all just rules glossary. So basically we see what seem to be some overarching design goals here. Obviously they want to have classes less front-loaded. They want to have them more back-loaded, as in big epic boon stuff. There seems to be more interest in, with the Druid, streamlining it so that there's far less complicated rules and mining other books to find out how things work. With the Paladin, it seems to be a lot about smite and make it more versatile, but also putting some limitations on it. And we saw a rework of a great number of spells, and most significantly, I guess, we saw all the smite spells changed so that with the new wording of smite, as well as the new way the smite spells work, they largely end up just being kind of a replacement for smite. So you hit somebody with an attack, and then you deliver a smite, or you hit somebody with an attack, and then you deliver a bonus action spell that has a smite effect to it. And of course, Paladins, in terms of versatility, allowing unarmed strikes, allowing ranged attacks, of course, creates a great deal of versatility, of course, but I think we're going to have to consider, I'm going to have to dig back into the Ranger. Is the new Paladin a better archer than the Ranger? I'm not sure. It might be. So those kinds of things, I wonder if that's right. Then again, we will likely see a new Ranger. We probably already had impact on the design of the Ranger with our feedback. So maybe we're comparing apples to oranges. But I will be doing deep dives into the Druid and the Paladin, and I will be giving more in-depth opinions, especially once I have a chance to sleep on this stuff and do some math and some analysis. So more videos are to come. This video was mainly just to let you know what the changes were. So until then, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.